Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sorting Hat Podcast, the show where everything and anything can and will be sorted. I, as always, am your host, Michael Barryte, joined by my co-host, Brice.
Home on the range, where the house elves and Hufflepuffs say.
Solid. The basic conceit
I'm a
of
country song
the
star
basic
now.
conceit of the show is that we have a fan or expert on a certain subject to discuss a theme for which they are excited about, and then we sort things within that theme into the various houses of Hogwarts. We are joined by Nikki Urban, who is a various individual about the Los Angeles area as far as the comedy scene is concerned.
Various.
Participating on the sketch team Fembot PhD and Bacchus with Reed.
Yeah, you can check those out at Pack Theater, but you also perform with Fembot in other places too. At least you have like online video content too, right?
Check us out on YouTube, Fembot PhD. Just look us up.
Yeah. And now we're going to be discussing mountain ranges. So, Nikki,
Yeah.
explain to me a little bit of what led to your fascination with mountain ranges.
When I lived in Michigan and Florida growing up, and we would travel from Michigan to Florida like every couple of years for a vacation. And my favorite part was driving through the Appalachians.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just fascinated by mountains in general, like how they're formed, how they exist, how they stay mountains.
How
People
you up
living
so high
on
in the air where I'm lower.
so cool. Rocks and shit.
and we're not going to be limiting ourselves necessarily specifically to North America as far as our mountain ranges being sorted today are.
No. We're going to talk about a bunch of mountain ranges.
Yeah, that's right. We're going global, motherfuckers.
Where do we want to start though?
Let's start with the one that Nikki told us off mic, which was the mid-ocean range. Let's start there.
Okay.
Yeah, just the biggest mountain range in the entire world. It spans the world.
Where about in the ocean, I presume, is the mid-ocean range?
In all of the ocean. No, it's like the center part of each ocean range. It's a mountain range that is connected throughout the whole world.
Oh, so this is like an under the water mountain.
Yeah, this is an under the water mountain.
This is where King Neptune goes hiking.
Yes.
So the mid-ocean range, some of these ranges, are they going to have volcanic or like constant tectonic shifts? I'm assuming,
That's how mountains are formed, baby.
Mountains are formed through tectonic shifting, but is there a volcanic aspect to the mid-ocean range at all?
Oh, absolutely. There's all sorts of magma happening. Basically, the mid-ocean range, or just like the oceanic range in general, that's where you got your like tectonic plates that are shifting. You get a lot of earthquakes, underwater earthquakes that happen. But yeah, it's formed from plate tectonics. And there's a bunch of different mountains that are linked in chains under the ocean. So it's pretty cool.
Now, is there like a larger? Because so the mid-ocean range is running basically in between every single ocean that we've got. So is there like a notable? Is there like a notable mountain specifically underwater that we're like, oh, when you think of the mid-ocean range, you're thinking of this guy?
Well, actually, Iceland is part of the mid-ocean range.
I see. I'm very excited for that, as I'm going to be going to Iceland pretty soon.
Actually, and this is wild. For a long time, researchers thought that the mid-ocean range was contained mostly to the Atlantic, the link between the Atlantic and North America to Europe. But it actually continues, and it can be observed in the oceans almost throughout the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just the Atlantic. It's
like
specific.
The biggest range, right?
Oh, yeah. I think Hawaii is even part of it. Right?
Oh, so it's just doing a fun little wraparound. So it's this all-encompassing, jaggy fun.
Yes.
What? Well, I'm like, it's interesting because it doesn't necessarily adhere to a specific region per se outside of like, is there water? Yes, it's probably there.
Yes.
So like I'm not necessarily seeing like a necessary ecosystem associated with it or anything like that. Like if its surrounded area was tundra or like it's an arid climate or anything like that. But we're just like submerged.
Yeah, mostly. Yep. Yeah, like the major identifying like quality compared to like all of the I guess like continental mountain ranges is that this one is produced through the volcanic activity and then subsequent sea floor spreading, right?
Yes.
Right. So it's constant. Like I wouldn't necessarily say then that the mid-oceanic range is it's certainly not the tallest because it's underwater. But it also stays pretty low overall based on the fact that the seafloor is just spreading, or is it also causing other areas to raise up significantly because the floor is shifting out, so that's causing other collisions elsewhere and seismic activity?
I think it's both because they estimate that there's at least 20 volcanic eruptions from the mid-ocean range every year.
Every year.
Uh-huh.
Okay. That's a fairly substantial metric.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I suppose actually at the same time, considering how expansive it is, that's pretty low. Like if I'm granted, I don't know what the metric is on average volcanic eruptions per year, and then comparing that to the mid-oceanic range, that might allow me to have a better sense of things, but I'm spinning my wheels a little bit.
But like, well, what you have to recognize though is that like a volcano is not a small thing.
No.
So like from those 12 eruptions and the tectonic shifting, you're gonna get close to a square mile of new mountain range every year.
I see. I mean, a volcano. The very definition of a volcano is just such that it's got magma, lava, like it does. Like there's no height component to it, as far as I know. So it could.
That's how mountains are formed. Is from magma coursing through the tectonic plate up and out of it. When it emerges from the plate, it becomes lava, and as the lava builds upon itself, that's what's creating the range.
Well, or just simply two tectonic plates colliding and pushing themselves upwards.
Yeah.
Like, and that doesn't necessarily require any magma per se. That just requires tectonic shifting in such a way that we, like as you push your fingers together, your fingers are either going to go down or up. And if they're going up, they're making a mountain. But okay, do we have? Well, is there any other factoids that are worth noting? And if not, where do we feel that this guy is due to be sorted?
I mean, I'd say like just the biggest, most interesting thing about it is the fact that it spans the entire spans the entire like world.
Mm-hmm. And it's one that is kind of more difficult for us to observe. We didn't even know the extent of like how big it was until this last century.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big boy, and it's one that we don't know as much about. So there's more of that like mystery quality to it.
Ooh, yeah. And it's also because it's underwater, there is just so much that element of like secretiveness, sort of. So am I allowed to go ahead and say Slytherin? I feel like it's a Slytherin. Can I jump in and
I mean,
before
you can make that claim.
I will add the factoid that it's very obvious that the mid-ocean range is simply the sleeping ground for the Cthulhu old god that is resting and will rise and destroy the earth.
Mm-hmm.
I do not ascribe to this Cthulhu theory you have, but
I mean, Michael's always going to be very bigoted against my religious beliefs, and I'm just here to tell you, I'm not going to stop telling the truth.
I'm not going to refute those claims of my bigotry towards your strange and obtuse beliefs, Reed.
Okay.
Just gonna let that one lie on the ocean floor, as there is
Sorry you had to be here
some degree of
for this, Nikki.
pulling into a ridge push or a slab pull as far as the lithosphere entering a trench.
That sure was a bunch of words that came out of your mouth.
They were indeed, as if pulled directly from Wikipedia itself. But no, there's like a cycling of either slab pull or like the re-entering of the mantle.
Yeah.
You guys, I feel like I'm caught between your two plates and being squished up. Uh-oh, magma's coming.
What was your argumentation for Slytherin again? I totally lost it in our weird quasi not bit of my bigotry towards a religion that may or may not be real.
Oh, it's real.
Sure.
Slytherin, I feel like mid-ocean range is like Slytherin, because it's underwater. It's like we don't know, like it's real. It's real
lurking,
sneaky.
so it's got some
like
mystery attached.
it's like working all the time. There's like it's constant. Like it feels like it's constantly scheming, but not scheming like where it's super super obvious until one day. The Dark Lord of fucking mountain is gonna explode under the ocean and fuck all our shit up. That's how I feel.
Gotcha. I don't object to any of what you've just said. I can lean into that dance with the devil. Let's move on to the Himalayas, unless, Reed, you disagree with any of the logic that Nikki's just laid out.
No, I agree we can move on to one that cannot be explained by the Necronomicon.
Okay, very good. Moving on to the Himalayas. What do we got on the Himalayas?
They got a breed of cat that they got there.
That's the go-to?
That's my working knowledge of the Himalayas is that it's cats, right?
You can't hear it, but Nikki was nodding very fervently.
Yes. It was a big yes. It's all cats. It's a mountain of cats.
Wait, the Himalayas are just cats?
Yeah, it's just cats under there. It's like a pile of white, fluffy Himalayan cats. Can't you tell when you look at the Himalayans? Don't you just look at it and go like, that's a bunch of kitty cats.
So this is the Himalayas.
It's in Asia.
Yeah, it's like it kind of is like what connects is in between the Asian continent and then the Indian subcontinent of Asia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's lifted by the subduction of the Indian tectonic plate under the Eurasian plate. Mm-hmm. So it's another example of two plates smushing up together and making some mountain babies.
And this is where you got the what you would call the Everest of mountains. Everest.
That was so wildly dumb. And it's worth noting, when Reed presented that information, they cupped their hand to their mouth, letting as if to let us all know that we were getting a big scoop.
All right, well, I just didn't know how else to say, like, this is Everest.
Yeah, Mount Everest is within the Himalayas and therefore one of the deadliest mountain ranges.
Yeah,
I've been to Everest.
You have? You climbed it?
Yeah, it was super easy. You sit down, they put a bar over your lap, and then you go. And there's like Yeti there, and
I think
like
you're
Yeti's trying
confusing
to
it with
attack
the
you.
Matterhorn ride at Disneyland.
Actually, it's called Everest. Expedition Everest.
Oh, is this at the Disney World?
This is at Animal Kingdom.
I see.
I've never been to Disney
yeah,
World.
Me either. So
we should go to Disney World.
But
Reed.
Nikki's from Florida, so that's why you got that factor.
Hi, y'all.
For a split second, because I am very trusting.
You thought it was real.
I thought you had actually been to Everest. I was like, damn, how have I never heard this about Nikki before?
Nikki's a mountain junkie. Of course she's been to Everest.
I should clarify that I can't like climb a mountain for anything. Like I'm not a good hike. I can barely even handle like these small hills.
But you can enjoy the majesty of them.
Oh yeah.
You're like a sports fan. Like they don't necessarily play the sport themselves, but they appreciate it.
Heck yeah.
Okay, so we've got a very deadly mountain range, and I might be ascribing that purely based on Everest, but like there are dead bodies all up and down Everest.
Like, yeah, because the thing about it is it's too dangerous to actually take bodies down. It greatly increases the chance that you will also die. So bodies, if you die up on Everest, you just stay there and you don't decompose because like it's frozen.
Right.
So you're basically being kept in a freezer.
Yeah.
Indefinitely.
You just have a bunch of icy corpses that probably people are continuing to climb over.
No, the most macabre thing about it is that some of the bodies are now like landmarks. To let you know what part of the mountain you're on.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's very unsettling.
Uh-huh.
Do you think that there are brands that are like hoping in like a very, very dark sense that they get a landmark out of it? Like,
jeez. Like if somebody's wearing a
North Face or
got
something.
some Yeezys on.
Oh my God.
Like how wildly fucked up that would be.
Some marketer was like, have we thought of this angle?
Yeah, like we're gonna dress these corpses up and name.
I'm surprised that like companies haven't like started advertising on people's caskets at funerals. Like I feel like capitalism, like at this point, it's like just like cover all your bases if you're not going to have any ethics.
Well, you just gave me a great idea for how I can get some more viewers on our Femba video. So thank you.
Wait.
Thank you.
Wait, what? I'm
Thank
confused.
you. You guys, I actually got it. There's a funeral happening over at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, so we should probably wrap this up because I got to get over there.
What, are you going to put Fembot stickers on their casket?
Absolutely.
Be sure to check us out at whatever YouTube channel
Some crying
URL
widow's
is.
like, okay.
Be sure to subscribe.
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a comedy person, but I can try once I bury my husband.
Ugh.
Also, I haven't been to a funeral in adulthood, which I'm happy about. But I imagine in Hollywood there are people who try to network at funerals.
Ooh, yeah, that's real cringy if you're
like
doing that.
There's somebody who like is like, should I bring my headshots with me? I'll just leave them in the car.
Well, there's a weird I think it's on Mark Maron's podcast WTF. I think it was Gary Shandling's memorial. Like there was like a weird moment where he was like, I was seated behind, I forget who it was, and he was like, I've not met them, but I like respect them a lot, and so I wasn't sure what to do. And you're like, that's a weird, because it is like a weird Hollywood bubble situation where like everybody does kind of know everybody, but they don't at the same time.
And like you kind of have to be like, am I ever gonna get this opportunity to talk to this person? Like who's your like hero or like in this town, in this industry? Like,
I don't have any heroes.
who's somebody that like if you noticed that you were sitting directly behind them at a funeral, you'd be like, this might be the only chance I ever have to talk to this person.
It's really interesting because I was thinking about this recently, and I don't necessarily like Edgar Wright is probably the pull I'd make. Like, but even then, like, I'm not somebody who is going to be like I fall over myself even when I'm just trying to reconnect with somebody who I haven't seen in a while. Like I showed up at a friend's party and I felt bad about pulling them away in a conversation because they're the ones hosting the party.
Yeah.
So like,
you feel like you wouldn't dare to.
No,
talk to
my anxiety would be so high that I'd just be paralyzed and choose to be like, I sat next to or in front of Edgar Wright, and
Gotcha.
that was at a funeral. That was weird.
What about you, Nikki?
I'm in that same camp where I think my anxiety would get the better of me. I'm not good at, like, I danced right. I was at like a sort of like party thing at UCB. I think it was like maybe their opening party for their new theater on Sunset. And I was dancing right next to Amy Poehler. I named a hamster after her. Like, and I still like did not.
Was the hamster named Amy or was the hamster named Amy Poehler?
Amy Poehler. I had two hamsters. They were Tina Fey and Amy Poehler.
That's an important distinction to make because if you're just It's Tina and Amy, a
No.
little less intense than full name.
No, it was full on Amy Poehler hamster. So when Amy Poehler died, it was like I like
It
posted
took me
it and people
just
were
a
like,
moment.
"What?"
The Himalayas. How do we feel that we're sorting this?
So a thing we need to consider is the Himalayas are inhabited by like 52 million people. So it's not like a sparse range.
Sorry, 52 million people?
Yeah, because it's over Nepal, India, Bhutan, China, and Pakistan.
Okay, I suppose that does make sense in retrospect. Yeah.
And it has a very, very strong control over the ecological weather systems.
Ooh.
Sure.
Because they're so big, it makes it so like whenever there is monsoon rains, it'll
Mhm.
all be staying on the Indian plains, and then like the plateaus are not able to
Yeah.
get as much of the rainfall.
Often what happens with like large mountains or like even in the cases of like valleys, you have like on one side is a very different weather system than on the other. And you're like, oh, this is the rain side. This is the dry side. That's just what happens based on the way that our environments are, which is really interesting. Continuing on with your point.
And because it's like it has such a stronghold on like the conditions of the subcontinent, that's why a lot of the peaks and of the range are considered sacred places in like Buddhist and Hindu religion.
Huh.
Do you have a direction that you're leaning with this as far as sorting goes?
So it's got that spiritual
Mhm.
component to it
Mhm.
that's tied into like, you know, the geography is very much tied into the culture of the people.
Right.
So it takes care of a lot more people than say the mid ocean, in a very mothering way. But we
Mhm.
also have to remember that's going to happen with a lot of these mountain
Nature-y
ranges.
things, yes. That will, yeah.
It's very vast. Some parts of it are very, very dangerous, but then other parts of it are very hospitable.
Mhm.
When I think of the Himalayas, I think of the cold.
Mhm.
Right.
So I think of like cold, like a little stark, little sharp. That's something.
Is that leaning you in one direction or another? I mean, I feel like they're Ravenclaws.
That's what I was going to say.
Okay. I think the spiritual angle or like the wisdom might have a knowledge slant to it
Mhm.
of a downhill skiing nature.
Oh yeah, because you know, religion is just trying to understand the universe,
Mhm.
but not necessarily having like objective science to back it up.
And also, I feel having something like Everest, which does require you to like approach it with much more of a strategy and a game plan in mind, because if you're going to climb this thing, you had damn well better know what you're doing and know like and have planned for every possible scenario and have an answer for it. Not to just use Everest as like the single defining factor of the Himalayas, but it is something worth noting. We're good on Ravenclaw as far as the sorting goes.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the Rocky Mountains. Let's come stateside.
Yeah. Let's open up a cold one, tap the Rockies.
What can you tell us about the Rockies, Nikki?
Man, the Rockies are so cool. What can I tell you about them? They are the third longest mountain range in the
Mhm.
world. They are the Rocky Mountains, aka the Rockies. They stretch from the northernmost part of British Columbia
Mhm.
down to New Mexico.
So this is one that goes like all the way through like the North American continent.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's right down the middle of things. It's most prominently, at least my exposure to it is through Rocky Mountain National Park, but it runs a lot longer than just Rocky Mountain because it's going all the way up.
Rockies are, I don't know, they're just like really beautiful.
Mhm.
It's like just a gorgeous mountain range with a lot of diverse with a lot of diverse wildlife and terrain. I spent a Christmas in Breckenridge once, which is like a ski town in Colorado, and it's like, man, it's it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's like a painting.
Yeah, all of Colorado. I actually was very fortunate to both be in the Rockies and then also Copper Mountain in 2017. And yeah, the mountain ranges, I mean, it is exactly what you assume like the quintessential pine forest looks like.
Yeah.
I will say the mountain range played a big part in the Western expansion, especially once the Americans came.
It did.
Yeah,
it was
once the American settlers rather came.
Right, the colonists.
Because expeditions like Lewis and Clark would get to as far as the Rockies, and then they were able to report back that like the minerals and the wild, like as for like the fur trapping industry, they were like, oh, the further west we go, it seems to be the more and more resources we're finding.
Right.
And so I think like it was finding the Rockies made them go, well, let's just keep heading west and it'll probably get better and better.
Yeah, and obviously the Rockies are like a huge geographical target just to see this large expanse because they're huge.
So apparently like settlers like really like went out into the Rockies, like exploited a lot of like the mining possibilities, but even to this day I hear that it's not as populated as some of the other ranges are. But it's really big for the hiking and camping. Folks.
Yeah. So with the Rocky Mountains, are there any? I mean, I know that there are a bunch of like 12,000 footers, 14,000 footers, in which is tall, but not necessarily as tall as like a Mount Everest or a Mount Kilimanjaro or is there any other notable geography associated with the Rockies in their more than 3,000 mile stretch, or if for those international listeners, 48,000 kilometers roughly, or 4,800 kilometers. Sorry.
I did read that. Yeah, it has the highest peaks in North America.
Yeah,
yes.
You got Pikes Peak,
and like the highest one is Mount Albert, and that's in Colorado. Because that one is 14,440 feet above sea level.
Dang.
Okay, so where I think we can just jump into it. There's a part of me that just feels as this is like what I envision when Bob Ross is painting.
Yes.
That this just makes it a Hufflepuff.
That's where all his happy trees come from, the Rockies.
I mean, it's the Rockies, or like, a lot of his inspiration comes from Alaska, because he was a Florida boy, and then when he was in the military, he wound up being based in Alaska and had never seen mountain ranges like that.
Oh.
Because, I mean, like, those two places cannot be more polar opposite.
Yeah.
Oh,
sure.
yeah. I think that's part of my fascination. My fascination was like spending so much time in Florida and Michigan, flat places. So I can relate to Bob Ross a lot.
Right. And so like, and these mountain ranges, like they run all the way up through, what are they I think they run through Grand Teton National Park and Yellowstone, because they run through Wyoming. I know that much. I don't necessarily know if they run exactly through. But are we okay in saying that this is a Hufflepuff, or is there argumentation that might lead us in another direction?
I would say also, I would give it the Hufflepuff angle, because like Hufflepuffs are known for being the most like maternal paternal of the houses, and the Rockies are what we are pretty certain is where a lot of early indigenous cultures first originated after the last ice age.
Oh,
Like that's like where a lot of them were like living.
that makes sense.
So I would go Hufflepuff for that.
Hufflepuff, yeah.
All right, let's shift it up and let's venture to the Andes.
Heck yeah. That's basically the Rockies, but on the bottom half of this continent.
Oh.
in the South American, that's the South American mountain range.
Oh, I see. Yes. And those are running through the rainforest, correct? Or
No, it's the opposite. Well, there is some like rainforest happening over there because like Peru and stuff like that.
sure. So the rainforest is not like the rainforest is below the Andes themselves. Like the Andes basically rise out of the rainforest, or am I completely off base? I know very little about South America, and I am full willing to admit to that ignorance, although I would love to venture.
Well,
there
there's three major divisions for the Andes. Geographical, geological. There's like the tropical Andes, which would be like the rainforest. That's what you like when you see like, like Peru or whatever, where you see it's like, oh, it's a rainforest. And then, oh my gosh, there's a giant hill. I had no idea. Then there's the dry Andes, which is, more of your arid climate. That's where things like quinoa and coffee are grown.
Gotcha.
And then like the wet Andes, which is like more of your just like very rainy sort of.
The Incans lived there, right? That's where the Incan Empire was, I believe.
The
Incas, Inca civilizations.
Gotcha. Okay, so
then,
we've got like an interesting grab bag as far as the the ecology is concerned.
Yeah,
which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, there's also some really cool, flora and fauna.
I don't doubt that, and that's where we got Paddington from. So
yeah, like this, the Andes are very remarkable also in the history of imperialism and colonialism, because this is where the Spaniards first aligned with some of the Incas.
Yes.
To destroy most of the civilization, and that's what caused a lot of the rest of the colonialism and imperialism in the American continents to happen.
But what role then would the mountains have played in that Spanish colonization?
I'd have to imagine that like living up in the mountains would give you a natural advantage from people who are like trying to like literally climb uphill to attack you.
Sure.
Yeah, especially since because like the Incans and indigenous tribes were they had a handle on making use out of the soil, like what soil that there is to work with in those mountains, because they figured that out so long ago. I think it was like easy for shitty white people to come in and be like, oh well, you figured all this out for us. Yeah,
it's like because like civilizations tend to want to stay by where the water is, and so this is like a place like not especially for the parts of the mountain ranges that are not near oceans. This is where you'll find like a lot of resources that can help you build up a group of people.
Well, it's also interesting because the Andes themselves are on like the westernmost part of the continent. So for the colonization, at least, they basically had to head towards these large mountains that then more or less like dropped them off of the sea, which is actually pretty remarkable as far as like mountain ranges go. I don't know that much about mountain ranges, but as far as I can notably recall, this seems to be sort of an anomaly in that regard anyway. The way that it's just like not like right along the coastline, but it's pretty dang close, at least in a relative sense. And it's also interesting, just in my moderate Googling, that the Andes don't have like a real notable peak, but it's rather just like a long running rail of just high mountain. And so it's just like, all right, there we are.
Yeah.
We're running straight and through. So with that in mind, and like, how are we feeling on this?
So this is a resource-rich, I guess in terms of like what our Western needs are. Like we're getting a lot of resources in terms of like the crops that you were talking about.
Yeah, and cocaine,
but also
and cocaine.
Don't forget about cocaine. Cacao.
It is also one of the. It's like the like parts of it are like the single biggest source of copper in the world.
Oh yeah.
So that's like which is used in a lot more than you think.
And gold.
And like and it's very much used for mining in general.
Yeah.
All throughout the the continent. So I don't know. I'd want to say maybe this is also a Hufflepuff range, or what do you all think?
I,
A lot of resources, pretty consistent throughout. I
Mhm.
mean,
It's it points to some of, at least for what is considered for the people who migrated over. This is like a newer terrain for Western history.
sure, but it also was like formed during the Cenozoic era, which
Yeah.
is
But it is
Yeah.
actually
65
the
million years
oldest
ago.
part of the America's history in terms of like the peoples who resided on it and stuff,
right, which is an interest.
along with the Rockies. So I don't know. That's what leads me to believe that it would be Hufflepuff. It's just been like a long time.
Yeah,
Place
I
for
don't
people to migrate
have
to.
any necessary feeling against that, so I'm going to say sure.
hmm
Um,
But also there is that whole thing of like uh being resource rich. It could be considered a Slytherin.
yeah,
uh, Hufflepuffs have a lot of resources.
They
Thank
are
you.
resourceful.
We
Yeah,
are resourceful.
So I don't know. I would say probably a Hufflepuff. in my
sure.
opinion.
I'm not like married to it. Let's go to the Alps.
Okay, let's go right to the Alps. It's where a lot of like fancy people like to go skiing in the
Mhm.
Alps.
Yes, it's Swiss, Austria, Germany. Region.
Yeah, and Italian as well. Yeah, France, Switzerland, Italy, Austria, Germany, Slovenia, Monaco. So, yeah, essentially, it's another thing where it's tectonic plates collided to create the Alps. And there are even some going right into the ocean. The Alps. You had said earlier the Matterhorn. You had mentioned, oh, is that the Matterhorn?
Mhm.
Actually, the
Mhm.
Matterhorn's
I
at
see.
the Alps.
That's
Yeah,
right.
That's a real mountain. The way that this initially like started to form was when the Eurasian continent and the African continent actually like collided. That was the catalyst for the formation of it.
So this was like the result of Pangea separating and
No,
Yeah.
it was a collision.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
hmm Which caused like, further up it started to like buckle up together.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And this is again one of those like 65 million years ago
Oh yeah.
Mesozoic era sort of thing. So is it always snowy? Are we?
No.
It's not.
No, it's you see that movie Frozen? That's the Alps.
Yeah. You know what
Yeah,
else
but
is the
that's-
Alps?
Mm,
The Sound of Music.
Yep.
That's
Sure.
where all of that is.
The hills
That's
are
where,
alive.
That's where the hills are alive. Are in the Alps.
right.
Yeah. So
Right.
definitely not snowy all the time. Like, beautiful. It's beautiful. Lots of wildflowers, farming.
Mhm.
There's not as much farming there, but not a lot of, grazing that can happen with, cows and whatnots.
Humans have been living there since the Paleolithic era.
Okay.
Yeah, they found a mummified dude who was like 5,000 years old there.
Oh man.
That's some dope nonsense.
Also, a lot of cheese comes from Alpine countries. So
Really?
big fan of you like cheese? Big fan of cheese. I am.
I'm partial to cheese, yes.
So I'm a fan of the Alps for that reason, for the amount of cheese that
The
comes
Alps
from.
have always been critical to European warfare. Hannibal famously took his elephants over the Alps.
That's right.
And then
Whoa.
also it was very much Hitler's Nazi war strategy very much depended on the Alps to keep their. Was it that they were keeping the Alps would keep people out of Germany, or that it was what they used as a battlefront to the other countries? I don't remember.
I mean, in both cases, it's interesting that we still
Because I know he had a base there.
right. It's very interesting in like a modern warfare era that mountains are still sort of viewed as a defensive thing, considering that it's like, oh, if there are plains, like mountains don't matter.
Yeah.
But obviously, like for the sake of a land invasion isn't going to easily happen over mountains, but like you can send paratroopers in and you can straight up fly tanks in, like,
Yeah.
which is pretty wild, and like stage not as clean land invasion because you can't control so much as far as like dropping one down into foreign terrain like that, but it's possible without ever like you're like, oh, we could have these tanks go up over a giant mountain range, or we could just get a giant plane to like drop an entire army into a new region, which is wild. We live in a crazy age. I am interested actually, and like we haven't discussed this on any of the other mountain ranges, but like the sort of geological makeup of the mountains. Like I know that these are more like limestone, clay, shale, and sandstone, and I think in general that's what we're encountering with most of our major mountain ranges, but I wasn't sure if that sort of information might cause us to lean one way or the other, because I'm strangely having a lot of trouble with mountains right now as far as
all of those minerals
goes.
that you described, those are in the softer parts of the
They are.
family, whereas the mid-ocean range is probably, because it's going to be having a lot more, I imagine,
magma
tectonic activity is probably going to be harder ones like basalt, isn't it?
You're probably right. But
okay,
the corrections department
to
can let
anybody
us
who's
know.
listened to this before and been like, Reed is the dumbest person on the planet. How do they know anything like this? This is one of the few science classes I actually took in college. I took a geology course.
I took one too, and nothing is sticking with me. It's like, it's one of those alarming moments where like you look at a subject and you're like, it all left. Like I took multiple sound editing courses in college, and still sound is like a thing that mystifies and baffles me, which is oh so appropriate considering we now have a podcast and like I'm working in animation, which means I'm dealing with sound all the goddamn time.
Yeah.
Anyway, to try to sort this guy, how are we feeling?
Yeah, what do you think, Nikki?
Oh man. You know, I'm gonna go with I feel like the Alps are a little showy. Like they're a little bit show offy.
Yeah, what do you mean?
Like yeah, I think of that like specifically that moment where Maria's coming up that damn hill, or up that mountain, and it's like covered in gorgeous flowers and a fucking meadow, and then you see in the distance like these snow-capped, mountains. You're like, man, this guy's really showing off. These Alps. So I'm gonna go with Gryffindor.
Huh? What do you think?
Gryffindor.
Again, the mountains are like giving me trouble, so
Yeah.
I'm willing to concede Gryffindor, although I actually thought the argumentation that you were making was leaning towards Slytherin. But
I would say that it's possible that it's Slytherin because there's a very strong cultural identity.
Oh, yes.
Which tends to also lean into causing an ethno segregation.
Ooh, that's true.
Self-segregation. Like, because if you think about it, like,
I mean, that's what mountain
it's a bunch of white
ranges
people,
do.
and I think that's why, like right now in the political climate that we have in America, a lot of reactionary conservatives and like the alt-right point towards Scandinavian and Alpine culture as being like what they would see their basis for rebuilding a white ethno state in America. And also being like, oh look, when they don't. When Sweden doesn't take care of its immigrant problem in quotation marks, look at all this crime that happens.
Yeah.
So I would say like that sort of disposition could also lean an exclusivity that I would give to Slytherin.
Gotcha.
You just convinced me.
All right. Let's move very quickly to the Sierra Nevada. We're back in North America. It's
How about you tell us about?
I mean, it's mainly just that I just wanted to say that the Sierra Nevada runs through most of the western parts of the United States. It encompasses and runs through Yosemite and Sequoia, and Mount Whitney is the tallest peak within that mountain range. It's just these are gorgeous mountains that have a lot of sentimental value to me. And John Muir traversed them all and gave us some great national parks out of it. They're
Is he the dude
Hufflepuff
who
as fuck, though.
who discovered them all?
He's like the one who is accredited with most of the national parks in the region. So like he
gotcha.
was the
wow.
naturalist who was like going about and being like, that's Half Dome. That's important. Hey, we should make sure that this stays important.
Oh,
and
cool.
like the John Muir Trail like runs up along them. And if I play my cards right, I'll actually be getting a chance with a friend to be climbing Mount Whitney sometime at the
Whoa.
end of this year, which will be pretty exciting. But they're Hufflepuffs because they're like, they're just like pine foresty again, similar to the way the Rockies are. Like the ecology is very similar. The geology is similar.
I will say,
Mm,
it is, especially for early settlers, it was a big part of the California gold rush.
yes.
The
Oh.
foothills. There's gold in them hills. They were talking about these Sierra Nevadas.
Oh,
And also, they were very, like, this is a terrain that is not hospitable to humans.
No,
In
it's-
some parts.
It's not, which could lean you
Especially
actually,
the southern parts.
which could actually lean you towards maybe claiming Gryffindor on
Yeah.
them because they killed a good number of people.
Yeah.
Shoot.
Because of that, even though we had discovered it and, like, had certain parts of it explored, it wasn't until I think it was like 1912 that we were able to actually look at all of it, because it's a very dangerous mountain range in some parts.
oh wow.
Yeah. Let's shift to the Hindu Kush, which the main reason that Nikki wanted it off mic was just because it has the word Kush in it.
Is that
Yes.
where the is that where
420
the
weed.
is that the etymology for Kush, as in like weeds? Does I can look it up.
Please do.
What do you got for us on Hindu Kush mountain range?
Well, also in ancient Greek as the Caucasus Indicus.
Sure.
Indicus. Indica. Okay.
All right, get back on track.
Hindu Kush. No, it's around the stretches near the Afghan and Pakistan border. And it's the third tallest mountain range above water,
Oh,
like land-based mountain range.
very interesting.
Yeah.
So what's the, like, now that I'm like oddly fixated on it, do we know like what type of
What type of weed you can grow there?
No, not what type of weed you can grow there. What type of what sort of like the rock base is and all of that, or is that like less important to you?
It's less important so much as all the weed I can smoke there. What?
I feel
I'm
you
done.
can smoke weed here. You can smoke weed here. It's legal in California. It's totally fine.
I'm gonna go ahead. Can I just already name it as Hufflepuff because it's Hindu Kush?
Yeah.
And that's
Cannabis indica is the one that's going to be more of like because I'll just say it. I live in California. Come at me, feds. Indica is the strain of THC that is more of like a relaxing body high sort of one, and it does come from the plants that were grown in this Kush mountain range.
It is also worth noting, unrelated to all of our weed discussion, that the Hindu Kush range remains geologically active, is still rising, and is very prone to earthquakes.
Oh, okay. So
snap.
this one's like still forming, like relatively active as opposed to the other ones.
Yeah.
It's just what I've read that it like, and I think, I mean, we've heard of like, I think there was like a fairly recent earthquake that was in this region that
Oh, really?
I believe so. That was like a 5 or a 6 on the Richter scale.
Well, hopefully it got some of those Talibans and Al Qaeda's because that's where the region where the Taliban and Al Qaeda grew, which was the Hindu Kush mountain range. Yeah. So it's like an interesting, when we talk about like the people that live there, it's an interesting mix because it's where, it was a major center of like Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like that aspect where, you have culturally, like Buddhists and Hindus. But then you also have, like extremists, like religious extremists on the other token of it. So it's kind of fascinating.
So you've got like a fringe Islamic group,
yes,
that is existing around there. Okay,
and that makes sense that like there would be as much conflict as there is to have that influence, but also it being like the place where like some of the earliest Buddhist schools, I guess, were founded.
Oh, here's a fun and rather upsetting factoid about this mountain range.
Okay.
Apparently, this mountain pass connected the slave markets between Central Asia and South Asia.
Oh.
I mean, people were finding all different ways to get their slaves trafficked.
But so apparently it was fairly common when people were trying to like cross this area, even through like the 19th century, for tribes to be like kidnapped and slave traded off, which is fun, uplifting information.
Yeah.
Where are we feeling this guy lands?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of conflict. This was also during the colonial era. There was a dividing line between the Russian and British areas of influence in Afghanistan. So there seems to be a lot of like, just a lot of conflict.
I think it might be a Gryffindor for that reason, because it's a little more prone to be a touch explosive. It's just it seems to be. I mean, that might just be I don't think it's specifically even a regional thing, based on also the fact that it's got like these tectonic or like these earthquakes that are taking place.
Yeah, it's just like a very active mountain range, as
on
opposed
like
to like
sense.
the Rockies.
Yeah.
So Gryffindor, very good. Let's close out with the range that started it all for you, Nikki, the Appalachians.
Appalachians.
Yeah! This is where my people came from.
Yes.
Probably.
But these are not rednecks, but Hicks. No,
hill people.
Hill people.
I would say that redneck is probably. I think you can be a redneck as long as you're someone who works outside, because that's like the term came from like white people who get sunburns on the back of their neck.
Yeah, because
If you're wondering what,
tell us about those Appalachian Mountains.
They're great. They're on the east side, east coast of North America, spreading from Canada down to like the top of Georgia, basically.
Sure. Yeah, it's
little bits.
Is Smoky Mountain National Park? Smoky Mountain National Park is associated with the Appalachians, because that's around Tennessee, I think, thereabouts. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail. I just live through national parks. So so the range.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a lot younger than like the Rocky Mountains. It's a younger mountain range, so it tends to be a lot more like it's more of a green mountain range. There's just like a lot of foliage, things like that. It doesn't tend to be as rocky or barren as say like the Rocky Mountains or even the Alps.
It's not poking so high up as far as the elevation gain goes if you're climbing any of those respective mountains. Right.
But it's actually like in length, it's longer than like the Himalayas or things like that. So that's kind of a neat thing, where even though it's not as old, but it's still longer than the Himalayas or Rockies. Or not Rockies. Yeah. No, not the Rockies. The Rockies are longer.
They do say, though, it's quite like researchers are still trying to figure it out, but they're saying like it's possible that some of the oldest mountain ranges in existence formed here first.
Really?
Ooh.
Yeah, like they're saying like it's possible that what was it called? New River is possibly older than any other range in the entire world.
Whoa. All right. So that we've got a little bit of, I don't know, some bragging rights, I guess.
The reason they are able to do that is they were able to date some of the exposed rock back a billion years with a B.
Great. Who doesn't love a billion
right
with a B? That's okay. There's the part of me that I don't want to be like leaning in the direction that this one also is a Hufflepuff, but it is again like falling in my mind of what is like the Bob Ross painting of mountains.
Yeah.
And I know that there's like a bias there. So I'm trying my damnedest to swim upstream and land in a different pond. I
feel like we need to take into account the culture of the Appalachian people.
Sure.
They are in the tens of millions of people, but it has been, especially with the nature of living on a mountain range, it's been very isolationist. A lot of yellow journalism and sensationalist journalism really affected that region. It was a big
salacious negative towards the Appalachian people.
I think in both directions. Because I think that's where a lot of the misconceptions of all the people in the Appalachians being hillbillies come from.
I see.
Being uneducated. And also, they were a major region of where moonshining took place during the Prohibition era.
Oh.
So there's a bit of a rebellious streak as far as what government mandates and what the people really wanted.
Because it was a very strange stigma the Appalachians had for a long time of saying like these are people who are they are more prone to violence based inherently on who they are and where they come from. And so it was like there was a lot of work that had to be done to help demystify those sort of stereotypes about the people of the Appalachians.
Yeah, but I feel like a lot of people, the Appalachians to me are like synonymous with the concept of going out and like leaving society and going and living in the woods. Like when I think about like where would be the like best place to get away, where you're away from everything, but like it's not super dangerous. Like I couldn't I can't think of going to like the Rockies. It would be like the Appalachians.
Also, this is a part of America that has almost always been in poverty. It's been hard to bring industries to them. Like there was like coal mining and then logging and stuff like that. But also like as soon as like automation started, a lot of that work has started to dry up.
And with those elements in mind, more on the economic front, I suppose, is that recoloring the way that you feel that this might be sorted?
I think so, because I think you just have to you have to it's hard to live there. And not in the terms of like it's a bad place to live, but like you have to be a hardier type of person than say my soft boy ass.
Sure. although hardiness does ascribe itself again towards Hufflepuff for me.
For sure. It is one of the regions that definitely does have a less secular culture. It's very much like part of the Bible Belt. And I would say you would want all of those factors to be put in, which would, I think lead me to say this is a Hufflepuff sort of.
But with the fact that a lot of people who live there tend towards like xenophobia, does that have any sort of
maybe
bearing? Because I feel like there is sort of a sense with people who live there who, maybe their jobs aren't there anymore and blaming it on immigration or things like that. So to me, that's sort of an element, but that doesn't have to do with the mountains. That's the people. But the people are the mountains.
I would just say it like the people who inhabit it shouldn't be the deciding factor of how we sort it, but it can give us some insight onto what the mountain range itself offers.
Sure. The way that the mountain range like affects
So like these people, they find what they need in the mountains, but it doesn't necessarily like make them part of the global economy. So you just and like they are exclusive enough that they have, like, for instance, a more pronounced dialect than, say, like we have out here in the Pacific.
Gotcha. Well, I still feel, based on everything, that we're comfortable as a Hufflepuff.
Yeah.
And with that, I'd like to thank Nicky Urban for joining us.
Thank you.
Where can we find more of you on the internets?
On Twitter at tweets at toilets. On YouTube, look for Fembot PhD, or you can look up my name, Nicky Urban. Those are my main places.
Very good, very good. You can follow me at Belated Media on Twitter. You can follow Reed Brice at That Dang Dingus on Twitter. You can follow us at sortinghat_pod for just basic reminders that, hey, we put out a podcast, and also here are some polls to help us sort various random things.
Oh, by the way, if you haven't noticed and you prefer Spotify, we are now on Spotify, so you can listen to the podcast there as well as iTunes.
Yeah, iTunes, Google Play, we're everywhere now. So you have no excuse not to be listening, but you're listening. But tell your friends who aren't, if they're like, but I only listen to Spotify. Well, we're on Spotify now, so get fucked. Thanks again for listening, everybody.
Thanks.
Take a hike.
Ha.